a learning center, a permaculture, a natural farming facility for everybody.
Everybody who's interested, try to share the knowledge.
It's how to combine finance and environmentally friendly practices.
My mission on this earth is to connect you to the magic of nature, to thrive physically and globally, to bring the principles of the rainforest into your everyday life.
Join me on this journey as I interview changemakers around the world and experiment with permaculture, syntropic agroforestry and so much more.
Hi, my name's Haley Weatherburn and welcome to Thriving with Nature.
Click subscribe to join the adventures each week.
Welcome Thrivers, I'm excited to share with you this interview I had recently with three very inspiring guys, Lenny, Djuca and Krishna. They have started Jiwa Community Gardens down in Canggu, and what they're creating there is a model of how you can create an eco business that becomes profitable and sustainable, and not only that, provides the community with food, with education, with beautiful energy. And so without further ado, check out this beautiful interview with Jiwa Community Gardens. Welcome Thriving with Nature Thrivers. Welcome back to this week's episode. We have the amazing Lenny, Djuca and Krishna from Jiwa Gardens. Welcome to Thriving with Nature.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
4 weeks ago, I came along to one of their community Saturday. They do it every first and third Saturday of the month at 3 p.m. The community can come in and get your hands dirty, get into the garden, and it's something that I've felt was missing in the Canggu area for such a long time, craving to just plant and be in nature. There's three of you, isn't there?
Exactly. So we have Djuca,
Yep.
who's our permaculture expert. So he's in charge of making sure all the different systems here work with ecosystems we're creating, with nature, and how exactly we make sure we don't use any pesticides. We do have a composting toilet and how all of that fits together. We have Krishna, who is the local guy. That's what he calls himself.
He's the local guy.
He's the land caretaker. He was the one who has the connection to the family who generously provided this land for us to build a community garden and make compost and all of these things together. And I came in as, I would say, the person who's responsible to find the right partners and make sure that this whole project is self-sustaining and it's not dependent on receiving donations or people having to show up on a Saturday, but it also has a bit of a business model behind it.
Okay,
so
great.
we can show that there is a profitable business also just growing vegetables organically and making compost out of waste and having chickens running around, that all of that works. And it's not just a dirty, hard job to do.
Yeah. It's. I mean, this is the philosophy of Thriving with Nature. For those who you have followed, I really believe that we can have a lifestyle that we're used to with modern aspects of it, and it thrives with nature, and it benefits community. And I believe that it's not one or the other. We can actually do both. And I could see that you guys are striving for that at the moment, right?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, and especially we've been looking at other organizations all over the planet that really want to do great things into permaculture and regenerative agriculture. But I think what people wonder about is always, and especially also local Balinese people, wonder how they can really make organic work for themselves, because it does, pose difficulties of trying to sell produce that might be a little bit more expensive. There's bugs and pests that come around, and how do you manage all of that without using, pesticides and chemicals?
Yeah.
And so we're trying to give an example of how to make all of that work while not going bankrupt.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's interesting actually. Krishna, who also, their family runs Serenity Eco Lodge, is that correct?
Exactly.
I stayed there a few years ago actually for my birthday, and again, it's another business that has, it's not a hostel, it's more like a motel, but it's fully in the gardens. They've done really well there. So it's another business model that I can see that they're again striving to thrive with nature as well, right?
Yeah. It's Serenity Guest House in Yoga, and it does have a mission of also showing other businesses how you can survive and maybe even have a business run better if you're green, if you're eco.
Yeah.
And so they've done a lot of just applications of permaculture in the garden and making sure there's not hard chemicals being used for cleaning, and there's no fogging in the garden. If there's mosquitoes, what's a natural way to get rid of them? So you do see lots of lemongrass and different things growing that take care of it automatically, and it's been working really well for them. And even now, I mean, Krishna would know more about this, but even now during COVID, because they have that little niche and they offer that close to the beach, and they have been able to, you know, survive and still have people come and stay with them and do yoga and be part of their whole offering that they have.
Exactly. And so part of my reason of bringing up Serenity Eco Lodge is that Krishna, so you might have to correct me on this, Krishna started the composting, what is it? They come and pick up your food waste, is that correct?
Yeah, Compost Heroes.
Compost Heroes, and that's here as well, isn't it? So I'm sort of, I'd love for you to tell me, how has this sort of developed from you guys just being 3 guys out there and then coming together and building this? How did you all come together?
It all did kick off with that. Krishna was looking more into, you know, waste management in Bali, what's happening with all the plastics, the metals, the organic waste, and yeah, one of the shocking statistics is that all of the waste that is produced in Bali, and also almost, you know, 70% of the waste that goes to landfill actually is organic.
Yeah.
And so it's
70%. I never knew that. That's crazy.
It's between 60 and 70%. And I think a lot of people don't necessarily know that it actually isn't waste, but it can turn into be something that's super valuable to all of us, right?
Yeah.
So it feeds the soil, which in the end feeds our bodies through the food that we grow in it.
Yeah.
And so Krishna was like, we need to take care of this, and there has to be more done about it. And they've started, you know, they've been separating the waste at Serenity for a long, long time. But there's so many households and other restaurants and other venues that don't do it. And so he started Compost Heroes, which is basically an organic waste pickup service.
Okay.
And so what he started to do is like, hey guys, I'm going to give you just a bucket and I pick it up once a week, and you put your organic waste from, you know, your kitchens or your gardens in there, and I'll bring it to Serenity and start composting it there.
Okay.
And that started, you know, picking up a little bit more.
Yeah.
And one of the issues he was facing, one of the problems was that Serenity didn't have enough space to really, you know,
well, they've made
process it
most
properly.
of all of their space, haven't they?
Exactly, and so
Yeah.
it was kind of in the back, and there was a few piles of, you know, obviously also just smelly compost, because if you don't do it right, you know, it turns into something that you don't want to have in your backyard.
Yeah.
And so that's when, first of all, he was looking for a new space, and he was also looking for someone who can help him really do the composting. And this is when he started reaching out to his connections that are, you know, local here in Bali. And one of the families that he grew up with, one of their sons said, like, we actually do have a piece of land just off the main road here in Canggu, Canggu, that hasn't been used in about 20 years. There's just a few mango trees growing on it. And Krishna was just initially asking for, can I have, you know, 100, 200 square meters just to, you know, start piling organic waste and turning it into compost. And, you know, coming to this space, I think he saw a bigger vision of saying, like, hey, there's actually so much land here that is not being used. And as he would say, it's a crime to not be using land that can be turned into something very fertile, that can be, you know, feeding our bodies healthily.
Yeah.
But then I think on the technical knowledge, he was kind of, you know, hitting a roadblock and saying, like, hey, how do I really make good compost? And that's when he reached out to Djuca, who we went to school with together back in the years. And Djuca's been working on so many different projects over, you know, the last 9 or 10 years, I think.
Yeah.
Really getting into permaculture and regenerative agriculture and working with local farmers, young and old, up in the mountains, and, you know, partly turning their farms into regenerative and organic farms instead of spraying with chemicals.
He also grew up here, yeah?
So Djuca's also born and raised here,
Yeah.
Same as Krishna. And I've been in touch with Djuca over the past year, maybe, just, talking about projects like this. And so I went up in the mountains with him and met a few young farmers, and, you know, just went through different systems of how we can support them and how the systems work. And I think my previous experience from managing Bali Direct for quite some time, we saw that there's potential of really all 3 of us coming together, sitting at the table and saying, like, hey, how can we turn this into a successful project, you know, that does the right thing, picks up organic waste, turns it into black gold, as we call the compost, you know, grow food, but also really just bring a community together and do that for everyone who's living in Canggu, but also outside, who wants to see how you can make, you know, and kind of like a very urban space, actually. I mean, everything around here is pretty much being built into villas and hotels and everything like that.
Here in Canggu.
How we can keep a green space but still make it work for everyone.
Yeah, and so what's sort of the process? You got the land. What was the process after that, and sort of the vision that you're heading towards?
So When we first came onto the land, it was just a few cows, it was grass and mango trees.
Yeah.
And we've started to pile up just organic waste somewhere in the upper corner here that started to smell, and the family that's living on land was starting to complain to us. We're like, hey guys, we need to do something about, you know, the fermenting fruits and vegetables. And
Yes.
so one of the first things we started to do is really just set up a little organized composting system, just to make sure we do the piling properly, and we have, you know, not just organic green fresh waste, food scraps, but we also need to have, you know, brown materials just to make sure organic, you know, the compost is actually working.
Yeah, and not smelling.
Exactly. And so that's one of the first things we took care of. But I think very early on we had to come up with ideas of how to make this work financially, and to make sure that we also integrate the community at the same time, that it's not just, you know, the three of us starting to build a business here and, you know, putting our own money in, which means that we need to get our money back out and maybe even more on top of that.
Yeah.
But so how can we make sure that people feel like they're part of this, but also contribute in the way that we can make everything work, and we can, you know, we can start employing people and start teaching people of how to do all of these things.
Yeah.
And so we started kind of separating the garden into different sections. So we have the composting,
Yep.
and then we have communal garden plots where, you know, well, anybody who wants to learn and who wants to garden can come at any point in time and, you know, help us and work with our team of gardeners here just to grow food. And we section out about a third of the garden, which we call sponsored plots.
I think we're sitting in that area.
We're actually sitting in one of the sponsored plots. Yeah.
You could be getting one of these spots.
Well, yeah. We managed to lease all of them.
Already? Wow,
Exactly.
that's amazing.
And so we have about 12 of them.
That's
and what
awesome.
we've done is that we said, okay, you make a contribution just to get the garden rolling, so we can, you know, set up the composting facility. We can build a water tower just to store water. We can dig out a pond, and we can set up, you know, our free-range chicken area with the coop and all of that.
Yeah.
And so all of these people that have, you know, secured a plot for themselves, first of all, made a monetary contribution, and in return they get a piece of the garden for,
Yeah,
you know, a certain amount of time. And it's totally up to them what they want to do with it, as long as it's along the lines of organic and permaculture farming. So we have a few people really just actually having Jiwa Garden take care of their plots. So we start growing vegetables and fruits, and we do part of it with them.
Yeah, that's
And
great.
one of our sponsors, he would like to have chickens on the land, so you can have, you know, free-range eggs every morning for breakfast.
Sounds
So
good.
we're setting up different things, and, you know, starting a black soldier fly composting that feeds the
amazing.
chickens. But Djuca will tell you more about that.
Yeah.
From there on, we've also always had the vision of really wanting to make sure that we invite everybody who's interested and try to share the knowledge that we have all gained over the past few years, and, you know, Djuca has collected, you know, doing different projects, and just to make sure there's a place here in South Bali, in the Canggu area, where people can come and learn, practice, and really see permaculture in action. And that's where what we call the education center comes into place. We're building right now. We've put the foundations in, and we're running a bamboo construction workshop in 2 weeks from now. We're building kind of like an open air, well, it has a roof, but it's open on the sides, completely built from bamboo, which
That's
is going to
awesome.
be the community classroom.
Yeah, well, you're incorporating, this is what I love about the kind of permaculture concept, is you often, when you want to build something, you bring in a community and say, hey, do you want to learn, and give your hands, you know, there's a lot of earthship blitzes where everyone comes together and builds an earthship, and so that's something that I noticed that you're doing. And when everyone turned up, but the first time I've been, I'm definitely coming back, there was a mix of locals and expats here, which was just beautiful to see. And you can see that's obviously obvious with Krishna and Djuca here being local. You know, there's this beautiful coming together of the knowledge and people wanting to take this back out into other areas of Bali.
Yeah. Yes, I think one of the things that Canggu is kind of or sometimes missing or is kind of lacking is the integration of, you know, expats, foreigners coming here, and locals that have already been here, you know, for obviously a long time, and kind of, you know, building bridges between them, and not just, you know, language wise or interest wise, but also obviously price wise. And, you know, some of the restaurants or places that I think most foreigners would usually go to, for a lot of locals it's just simply not affordable.
Yeah.
And so having a place where it's really just about coming together, doing things together, sitting in the garden, you know, drinking a coconut or a local coffee that, you know, doesn't break the bank just because you spend a Saturday afternoon, you know, out of home. that was one of the things that we really wanted to make sure that happens, that we do have local communities come, expats come, and really just see that, what we can learn from each other and what everybody else is up to, and to make sure that we facilitate in a way that everybody feels invited.
It certainly does. And you can see just by how many people turned up, the need and want that people want to be connected to nature and learning more and getting their hands dirty. And yeah, it's amazing what you guys are doing here. It's so wonderful.
Yeah, it's just, I just love seeing how also trying to turn people that are not interested in permaculture per se, but maybe, see potential value in what it does to them and what it does to their minds and bodies. And really, I've been trying to, force a few people to come and really just give it a chance.
Yeah.
And it's interesting when you have people, digging the pond or just moving horse manure around, and the latest that it really does happen with them is when you give them a seedling and they just unwrap the seedling, put it into the soil, make sure it grows well, give it a few good wishes for the future, that it produces lots of vegetables or fruits, and it's almost impossible to not have a smile on your face when you do that. And that's been super beautiful to see.
Yeah, it's so wonderful. So what's your pie in the sky, your vision for Jiwa?
We wanted to make sure that community comes through,
100%.
that it's not just us building a garden, but hey, it's more than that. There's more people involved. There's a lot of people that have different interests, but that are all combined on using this piece of land.
Yeah.
Without just taking too much
Many
out of
hands.
it.
Yeah.
Exactly.
For you personally, is there a moment that you'll know, oh my gosh, we've really achieved what we set out for? What would that be?
I think to some extent we've already passed a lot of the expectations that we've had.
Awesome.
So that we do have, every 2 weeks that there's 30 to 50 people just rocking up. So I think we've managed to create a community that really just loves spending time in nature, loves to learn more about where their food comes from, and really just spend some time out in the green, which I do think sometimes is lacking in Canggu. There's no really green spaces you can go to. There's no
the rice
parks.
fields, but you can't really stand in them.
Exactly. It's nice to go for walks, and you take your motorbike up in the mountains, and it looks nice, but it's not really that you do have your feet on grass.
After talking with Lenny, I got the opportunity to sit down with Djuca.
What drew you to this project?
For me, it's actually been quite a long-lasting dream of mine since I'm quite young. I would say at about 17, 18, I was just coming back from Amsterdam, and I was just out for a few years. I got back to Bali and I thought something's missing. I would love to be a little more in touch with at least my local environment and understand better. And a community space, garden, center, I don't know, something along those lines was my flow. And 10 years later, we actually managed to make one together with some friends, and Lenny and Krishna in this case. But just a few months before we started this project, I was envisioning something very similar with my neighbor near Brawa, and it kind of fell through. So I'm not even joking. The next day, Chris calls me and he was like, hey, I just wanted to talk to you. I didn't know you were in Bali. We should hang out, and I have some ideas to pitch. And he said about the composting.
Yeah.
I was like, that's insane, because just yesterday I had kind of a no-go with the other garden project, and this place was bigger and better and in a better location, and I was like, fantastic, so why don't we do a community space garden project? And he was like, I'm not really sure what that is yet. And I'm thinking, don't worry, I got this.
You got that piece.
I have the whole idea in my head. Not everything, but half a hectare is a lot to work with, especially in this area. We're not talking about rural Bali. We're talking about
Canggu.
quite literally in center of Canggu.
Yeah.
By a river, and when I saw the place, I was like, this is perfect. Yes, it was doused in plastic for the first few months, but I was sure of the potential, and that's how my kind of dream managed to manifest itself over these past few garden sessions, let's say.
Yeah, and it's happened so quickly. I mean, it's you wouldn't even know that it's only been that long. You have so many gardens, and I think that's part of the fact is you guys have really emphasized community to bring it together.
Yeah, that is the pillar, I would say, of this project, specifically this one. It is in a strategic location, and community is lacking here, I would say, in a quite big. So we have a lot of community things, but community in the sense of you can come get together, and even if you don't like gardening, it's still a place to hang out, and it's going to be a place for every minded person in general, but with the goal of connecting you to this rhythm of nature. Even if you're not purposefully doing it, you learn through being in nature and seeing such an example. And when we said let's do these garden sessions every Saturday, just come, no need for an event, no need for posters, just post it out, see what people say. It doesn't have to be official, it's free, old, young, it doesn't matter. Get your hands dirty, get together, and a garden will happen, especially if somebody that's done it before can kind of like guide the project. And I've done lots of promo blitzes before. We used to run promo blitz Bali for 4 years, and that was endless, week after week of community gardening in private projects of our own. So this just kind of took that idea and just based it here so that everybody can enjoy it together.
It becomes more of a routine, and it creates that community. And something I said to Lenny was, it's created a community. I mean, both you and Krishna have grown up here in Bali, so there's this beautiful bringing together, because the expats and the locals sort of are separated in this subtle way here.
100%. There is a very distinct line, and that is my biggest issue with Bali, Canggu specifically, and Ubud, and all of our community spaces. They're quite segregated, and it's not even the Westerners' fault. The Balinese don't want to hang out with Westerners. In Canggu specifically, you'll see they're not interested. It's a different life, it's a different world for them. And I grew up with both. I grew up with my Balinese family, with my Italian mom, and all my expat friends and local friends, and it's clear there was a very distinct line. And that's probably the biggest issue in the word community. Like, what is a community for? Who are we? Who is the community? And through my friends and Chris's friends and Lenny's friends, we are quite, I would say, integrated in the local groups, and we're over 50% local on the community side of things. And then there's also different layers of this whole localness, like, are you Balinese? Are you from other places of Indonesia? Do you guys, do you get along? So thankfully, and I'm so happy and proud about this, that we managed to merge really the whole Western to local community vibe.
So you're the permaculture guy, the systems of nature. Tell us a little bit about what you've done here and why you've sort of put things in certain places.
That's a very good question, and that's where a lot of time and a lot of mistakes are made throughout my 10 years of progress in permaculture and learning. And Chris keeps introducing me as a permaculture expert. He's our permaculture expert. This is Djuca, he's a permaculture expert. And so I do put the face for it in Jiwa and in many other projects that I do. I take a lot of input from everyone around me. I have a lot of mentors, teachers. They don't know it, but they're definitely my guide even through this project. I do ask a lot of questions, and I invite them over as well sometimes. So it's not a one-man show, 100% not the case. And we do always experiment. And nature tends to do the best at showing you. So it's not like, so we're 100% taking it by the laws of nature. So I do implement a lot of things like the water catchment system, and where exactly are we going to put this pond? It's a big pond, it's 50,000 liters, and you make a mistake of placement and you'll have a lot of consequences. And dry season, no water; rainy season, too much water. Especially on a land like this, who's been pretty much I wouldn't say unproductive, but malnourished for the past 30 years, unable to retain any water. And so you really look at all these examples, and you look at the landscape. Every landscape is different. Every 100%. Climate, even within Bali, is different. So being very careful with your steps, and being able to take some plan Bs if anything goes wrong, which is mostly the case. Something does end up going wrong.
Nature's always telling you, and I remember in my permaculture course how Nick, who was the teacher, Nick Rattar, said if we'd ask a question, he said, context, tell me more. Like every garden, there's just not a standard answer for chickens should go here, ponds 100%. Should go here.
And our resources in this area just vary. You're working with so many byproducts. You're working with so much excess resources from someone that to other people is worthless, and to us it's like magic, you know. And so we're just trying our best.
Yeah, it's phenomenal. I mean, when I came a couple of weeks ago, you had a massive pile of horse shit. I was part of the digging crew and wheeling that down into the garden, which was really amazing. So you've obviously starting to source areas. I can see there's a lot of mulch, which I think Lenny said's coming from the rice fields.
As well, yeah.
Yeah, it's really beautiful. And the pond system that you're building, there's one we started building that one that's close to the chickens, and then I've noticed you're building another one on the other side.
It's, I mean, like I was saying, it technically already has its place. We've arrived and things were already in their place due to nature's way of explaining this is where water will, you know, store itself best. That's where you'll have more inclination. This area will have less sun. This area gets more wind. You find these out almost by mistake. You're just kind of like, oh, wait, this place is all damp, and this is a pretty good spot to put a pond, a mass of water, a place that water will collect by itself, and then it will be easily distributed. And some people call it, you know, a little dam, a key point. And yeah, we're getting all the nutrients from the market.
Yeah.
That's just tons and tons, like on a daily basis, we're talking about a couple 100 kilos.
So what's your ultimate goal? I mean, you're already achieving so much anyway, but what's your ultimate goal for this to be in the world?
I mean, one of the main goals that I think we're already proving is the myth of exclusivity to permaculture or to these forms of regenerative agriculture, or the trend. And I learned permaculture through my Balinese teachers, Pak Chakra. It was open sourced, it was free. It was free if I knew how to access it. You know, of course, somebody that might not know yet will pay for a course, and that's fine, and that's how it should be. But the exclusivity needs to be broken. We cannot make it an exclusive thing. The permaculture has to be a completely open can, or it's already failed.
Yeah.
It has failed its own mission. You cannot. So to turn this idea of natural farming into non-exclusive, but to open for the community is the real mission here. We're trying to, we cannot turn it into a high-class, expensive, bougie, you know, hipster warung. It defeats the purpose, and I'm 100% putting my foot down for that. It cannot happen. In fact, that's been the biggest issue in Canggu for me, because I grew up here. I grew up, you know, surfing Old Man's before it was called Old Man's, and for me it was really like to see what we've turned Canggu into. It's painful, like daily reminders. And so if I'm going to create a community garden, and then all of a sudden I find myself in this, you know, permaculture green world of expensive, shiny bamboo, you know, and where locals are just like, well, I can't, it's not replicable. That's, you know, that's what the goal is, to make it replicable, to make it really accessible, to make it open source. Who can pay pays for the ones who can't. Simple as it gets.
Exactly.
Accessible. A local friend of mine can come here and have a 3,000 rupiah coffee without, you know, questions asked. That's how it works.
I wanted to ask, what do you see? You know, I'm very aware that I am a white girl that's not born here, that comes in here and has a goal and a vision, but how do I cross that barrier to reach the Balinese culture? Not to teach them anything, I want to learn from them as well. What do you find is the most grounding or coming together process, or I'm not quite sure what I'm trying to ask here, but
how to break the barrier, maybe.
Yeah, because there is that.
It's a tough one.
Yeah.
The thing is, within Bali itself, within Indonesia, we're Nusantara for a reason. It's a freaking, you know, concoction of a million different cultures. And that's not exclusive to in Bali. It's the same kind of thing. Just because we have the Balinese culture, it's a very different culture in the north as it is in the south. Yes. There's even Aga Balinese villages where they don't even follow the same Hinduism as the, let's say, newer Hinduism. So, you know,
context.
Yeah, exactly, context.
Like
and
permaculture.
It's crazy because some Balinese are super spiritual and open about it and more about the nature, and some are just, you know, working with tourism, and they don't really have maybe an understanding of environmental impact that their own culture has on the environment that they're so protecting. So it's like you have a lot of, and it's a big debate within the Balinese community. You know, there is priests that are completely losing it around environmental issues. They're like, this is insane that we're preaching all about nature in the Trihita Karana, and we're just, on the way to bless and pay respect to the ocean, we leave a mountain of trash.
Plastic.
Pardon my French. So it's completely a big debate within the local community. So for you to integrate it, I think it's, of course, your direct environment, where you're living, and ask people who might have already been there. For maybe in your example, I'm sure Norm would give you lots of advice, and he's been one of my biggest inspiration. Like he's inspired me a lot. Pat Norm. I think anytime I'm lost in any occasion, I'm very happy to have some words from him. So. But in this case, I think just dive into the very direct culture, just cooking, music, dance. That's the first barrier between them and us. It's just the daily things.
What you guys are doing here is absolutely phenomenal. And is there any last thing that you would say to someone watching this that's inspired by what you're doing?
Reach out if that's something that really inspires you. We're here to learn as much as we are to teach. So I know I have a lot to a lot of things to learn myself. It's never ending. So reach out.
And it doesn't have to be that Saturday either. Like, you have volunteers
We're
today.
Here every day. Day. Eventually it will be more and more. Like I said, this place is only just now developing to become a learning center, a permaculture, a natural farming facility for everybody. It doesn't really matter. And we really invite people to reach out if it has to do with these topics.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Djuca. Now you've already heard about him through both Lenny and Djuca. Let's meet Krishna.
I'd love if you could share with us a little bit about yourself and your background and how you came across Jiwa.
Right. So I'm originally mixed French and Balinese. My mom was born here, and my dad was French, and he moved to become Indonesian about 35 years ago. So my whole family is now Indonesian.
Yeah, wow.
So basically that kind of describes who I am as a person also. As a mixed kid, I have never been accepted in anywhere. So for Balinese people, they don't consider me Balinese. It's not in a bad way. It's because I don't look and I don't sound the part. They always consider me an outsider, even though I was born here. And on the other end, the positive side is that I've always been able to collaborate with lots of people. For example, the international community, locals from other parts of Bali, foreigners, basically. So that really allowed me to see the world in a different way. Now, because I've always felt that I've never really belonged anywhere, I think, and this is the same for Djuca also especially, because he was born here, but he's a foreigner. And he will maybe become Indonesian soon, but let's see what happens. But I think we all come from the same sense that we wanted to belong somewhere. Not by nationality or by religion, but just be felt as part of a community. And during COVID, a lot of things happened. First thing first is my family business, Serenity, went from 120 employees to 20 employees, from 300 customers per day to 30 customers per day. And my dad kind of took over Serenity as the active manager. And I now had the chance to start a project that has been really close to my heart since I was a little kid, which is a project to belong somewhere, to a community. So during COVID, it first occurred to me that nothing is happening, so might as well do something out of it. The only two things that are still happening now during COVID is gardening and health. If you're a doctor, you're probably still busy. If you're a gardener, you're still probably growing food. I'm not a doctor. My background is hospitality. I studied in Singapore and got my bachelor's there. And I came back and I was very classical. The family business was a guest house and I became the guest house manager. So my background is hospitality, but my passion is how to build a green business. So I don't consider my family guest house as just a guest house. It's an example of running a business without destroying the environment. And ever since that kind of mindset clicked in me, everything I do, it's how to combine finance and environmentally friendly practices. So everything I do, which makes me a bit different than Djuca and Lenny because they're more focused on the vision and the community. So if people are wondering like, where does Krishna come in the whole Jiwa trio, I'm the numbers guy. Partly because Indonesians also need to see money in everything they do. I believe that if Indonesian person sees money in it, they will do it. And if we can show people, and we already have shown people, that by running an eco-friendly business is much more profitable than running a regular business, then the hope is by example they will follow. Lead by example. So to be able to create an example, you have to lead. So this is why the Jiwa Garden came to be. So during COVID, each of us individually, we had our own thoughts about what can we do during this really negative time. And for me, it was really starting about Bali's biggest problem, which is waste. Right now, all the landfills are filled to the brim, and they're about to be shut down pretty soon. Every day, Canggu and Peranan, these two villages, they send trucks of waste to the landfill right now. But 80% of that waste is organic. So during COVID, my first thought was composting. Composting is still viable. So I started with the local Canggu market. Every day I would go with my employee, and we would pick up 20 kilos of organic waste and put it behind the family business. 20 kilos of organic waste is no joke, it's a lot of waste. So after a month, Serenity's composting facility was filled to the brim. And that's when I started to ask around, and one of my close friends, Maritugo, said, hey, I've had this family land that has been undeveloped for 20 years because we're so busy, we're contractors, realtors, no tourists, why don't you develop it? And I said, I don't have the money. Tell you what, give me 1 ara, 100 meters squared, it's all I need, but don't ask me to pay anything because I have no money. We talked about it a bit more, and then he said, I talked to the family, and they're actually okay, they know who you are, they know what you do, take the whole land and we'll work out the details later. More on a, instead of a cash payment, more of a profit sharing scheme. So when I first was given this half hectare, which by the way, if you were gonna buy a piece of land this size, it would be $3 million US. So to be given a $3 million US asset during COVID times, it's like, what do you do with it? So I put a video out and I went to my communities, to my networks, and I said, I have a piece of land in Canggu, who wants to get involved? Djuca first reached out to me. He's my childhood friend, so I knew exactly what he does. He is considered one of the greatest permaculturists in Bali. He practices more than theory. So when he said, I want to be part of it, I said, yeah, let's do it. And then Lenny came along. So Lenny is also a close friend, and he comes from a more business background. The vision, raising funds. He's amazing at creating an image of Jiwa to the outside world. Just excellent. So here we are, 3 people, and we're like, okay, cool. We have the team, we have the land, now what? Oh, we need the money. Oh, okay, we have no money. So then we decided we're gonna lease out 1,000 meters square or 10 ara and use that to raise funding for the first round, to buy the tools that we needed for the salaries, to start building the composting facility, to pay for the motorbike able to pick up the compost. Because the goal was, once we were able to already set up, all the compost from the local Canggu market would be brought to Jiwa. And we're now at a stage where we've run out of organic waste. We're processing it so effectively with a combination of animals and humans that we're able to take more organic waste.
So the composting is you would say, sort of the foundation of what it's built on?
So yeah, so absolutely, the composting was the first step, because the composting, with it, will attract farmers. We didn't see this land and said, okay, we're gonna raise everything, we're gonna flatten it out, we're gonna buy some land, some soil, some fertile soil, and put it on top. That's not permaculture. Permaculture is using what you have. So the first step was really to get our composting facility operational, for us to start turning this food waste into compost, and for it to start using it as beds, as garden beds. That was the first step.
How long did it take before you started to hit ground, like that perturbation process of like, how are we going to do this? Or are you sort of learning as you go?
Yes, yes, learning as we go. It cannot be where we had the perfect formula, because that would just go back to the whole mindset where I built it and now you enjoy what I built. We will never be finished. And that's the beauty of permaculture. Permaculture is never perfect. It's always going to be a continuous learning process. And that's the whole beauty of it, because there's no way you can say it's finished. You can have milestones. Okay, we built the bamboo education center. Okay, now we have a nursery. We've already educated so-and-so people, or how many people, but you can never say that you're finished.
So what's your biggest dream for Jiwa Gardens, for what you're creating here?
The biggest dream? Well, I think I'm already living the dream for Jiwa.
That's awesome.
The biggest fear of any project, especially for me, as I'm the finance person of this project, I take care of all the accounting. For me, the biggest fear is that the project runs out of money. And usually when we have big projects, I'm the negative one. I'm like, oh, we gotta slow down, guys, let's not buy this big water tank, get a smaller water tank. So I'm considered the negative one. Lenny is the optimist. He's like, oh, the money will come. So honestly, right now it's living the dream. It's allowed me to live out a life goal of mine of building a green business, and this is living the dream right now. So that's on a personal level. For Jiwa, we definitely want to replicate, but not call it Jiwa also. The idea is for us to change the way business is done in Indonesia, or no, that's too big, Bali, because let's just go step by step for now. For example, if you're a driver, instead of just being a driver where they take you to the clubs and get you wasted and then bring you back home, what about a sustainable driver where they take you to a permaculture garden, they can teach you about nature, go on nature walks. If you're working in a restaurant, instead of serving food that's usually very meat heavy, you're working in a restaurant where they sell healthier food. So the big goal of Jiwa is to set a example of sustainable tourism, not just for a business, but for an area. Right now we started with the village of Canggu, where we take care every day of 200 kilos of waste, which is still very little. It's a step-by-step process. Government doesn't sometimes work on the same pace as you do, but it's a work in progress. And the next step is hopefully this month to work directly with the government of Pereiranan for the organic waste.
Amazing.
So these are the steps.
Yeah. So
That's-
hopefully there's a model of that each regency will have their own community garden that processes, not only processes the food waste, but produces food for the local region.
And the best part is already really great examples in Bali. So one example is Desa Taro. They're known for their fireflies, and fireflies only come out when you have the cleanest water and the cleanest air. And the good news is I interviewed the leader of the project. Don't ask me his name. I think it's Pakade. They're also Pakade. And he was visited by the Ministry of Tourism and Creative Economy. And he saw the fireflies and he was shocked. He was like, wow, this is so amazing. So if we can have more of that, then we have a chance of winning the fight against unsustainable tourism. So luckily we have a great community all around that are doing the same things. So for me, as I live in Canggu, my ID is from Canggu, I feel that my battle is first and foremost for Canggu and Pereiranan, this area right here, which is now considered one of the biggest hotspots for tourism of Bali. I would say, I don't have any facts or numbers, but when you visit Ubud or Kuta or Suminya, Canggu is the place where it's really going very fast. And this is where I feel if we can make a change or an impact here, honestly, whichever way you want to do it, you want to shame the companies who are not eco-friendly, you want to teach them, you want to collaborate with them, anything works. There's no wrong answer, but to do something is very important. To make Canggu Pereiranan not the next Kuta, but the next ultimate sustainable tourism place, the next Euroville maybe. I don't know. Maybe.
And one last thing, if you've a message to someone who's sitting there who's a numbers person, who also really is passionate about the environment and making a difference, what's your advice or message to help do what you're doing?
Right. So whenever you want to start something, you need to know the more you spend, the more you got to make up for it. So the less you spend in the beginning, the more potential that the business will work. So Jiwa is not my first business that I started, but it's the first true green business that's ultimately cool. My first business was actually a room rental business. So I have 12 rooms in Canggu also. But the same principles of business apply. If you're spending this much, you need to have this much, or you're not going to make any money. Instead of thinking, build all first, all done, and then try to make some money, build slowly. Jiwa did not start with the education center. This is the third thing that we did. The first thing we did was the composting.
Yep.
And that's very low cost. The only thing you need to pay really is the employee, which is $3 million a month. The second thing after that was the vegetable beds. And the third thing is the education center. So don't start with a lot. At first, start small.
Thank you so much. We
Yeah.
covered so much. I could
Yeah.
keep talking to you for hours.
Yeah.
I'm excited to see how it grows and you know what happens. Just in the last 3-4 weeks, it's already grown so much since I was last here. So I just wish you the best of luck. And I will be here for the, you know, I live here. I've been here for 8 years,
Yeah.
so I will be visiting a lot.
Okay. And if you have anybody who just wants to come here and join and give their opinion and garden, come to Jiwa.
So if people are interested in finding more about your model so they can replicate it or coming here, what's the best way that they can get in touch with you?
I mean, one of the good ways, I think, just for an introduction is to come on one of the Saturdays.
Yeah.
Just to show up and really feel the place and get to know the people who show up regularly, and you know.
It's the first and third Saturday, is that
Exactly.
correct? Yeah.
Every first and third Saturday of every month, 3 p.m. You know, just it's literally it's a free event. Just show up if you want to bring your boots and your tools, and you want to bring some seedlings or trees that you have lying around, or you know, seeds that you've been saving or bought from, you know, anyone you know who's selling seeds. More than welcome to do so. There's so much space here,
Yeah.
and we can let you grow almost anything.
Amazing.
And I think that's just good to have a bit of an introduction of what the place feels like, especially for people who are interested in maybe doing something similar. Just
Yeah.
to, you know, check out the different aspects, have a chat with Krishna, Djuca, or myself.
Yeah.
And of course the other community members, how they've been perceiving the development also.
Yeah.
Because we've had people who've been coming since December or January
Yeah,
when we started
amazing.
this. And of course, yeah, on Instagram, on Facebook.
Jiwa Community Garden or
the
Jiwa
tag
Garden?
is Jiwa Garden.
Okay.
Jiwa Garden. Jiwa Garden, no S, it's just one garden for now.
Yeah, thank you so much for your information, and I definitely encourage, if you're here in Bali, come down to the gardens.
Thanks so much for coming by.
How inspiring are those three beautiful men? I feel very honoured that I got to sit down and see them at this very beginning stage. Even in the first 6-7 weeks that I've seen them go through this, there is so much activity and growth, and turning up to one of those community garden days is really fun, and you get to meet some really cool, interesting people. So I'll pop a link down below and you can check them out. Otherwise, stay tuned. Obviously next week is the next episode of the vlog. If you haven't seen any of the episodes of the vlog, come join me as I'm building a permaculture and syntropic agroforestry farm here in Bali. I'll pop a link up the top there. Otherwise, have a beautiful week, and I will see you in the next episode. If you want to learn more how you can bring the principles of the rainforest into your everyday life, grab the Thriving with Nature free checklist from thrivingwithnature.com/checklist and start changing your life to be thriving with nature.